Hello, listeners, and welcome to our very first podcast in front of a live audience. Hello, audience.
Hello. You see, they do exist. We're not telling lies, are we? Now, we are in Jane's hometown of Birmingham as guests of the Academic Archers Conference, and you might remember that we interviewed Cara and Helen from the Academic Archers in season 2.
And quite incredibly, that experience didn't put them off. So we are actually recording this in the actual BBC at the actual mailbox. And the area that we're in is just outside the studio where the Archers is recorded. And you know this area well, don't you, Sunny?
Yeah, I certainly do, because this is the area where, during the pandemic, and in fact until quite recently, that we used to have the Archers read-throughs before we recorded the episodes. And this is also where we waited in this whole area, you know, to go into the studio to record when we were called for our scenes. The studio doors are literally just over there, behind our audience here, listeners, and that's where the magic of Ambridge is made. And so many members, in fact, of the Archers cast quite recently have sat here on these chairs. Ooh, I hear you say.
And we have walked past life-size photographs of Ruth and David Archer and, rather bizarrely, a TARDIS, which maybe that explains where the Tuckers went.
Yeah, indeed, Janie, indeed. Anyway, today's episode is about friendship. And Janie and I have been friends for 45 years or more. Where have the years gone? I don't know. And friendship is very, very dear to our hearts. And it's, in fact, one of the reasons that we started this podcast. So today, we will be exploring friendship through the stories of people who develop their friendships through the Archers.
And where better to start than with Cara Courage and Nicola Headlam, who are the founders of the Academic Archers, and amazingly, they organised the very first conference together before they ever met.
Mm-hmm. So, Cara, let's start with you. How did you find out about each other?
It was through the good old-fashioned system of Twitter and the tweet along, and there was somebody that literally said, you and Nicola need to talk. It was the Route B storyline. Nicola and I, our academic interests meet in the middle of this place, which could be around planning, and there's public consultations and those kind of systems. And of course we were really vociferous on Twitter going, it wouldn't happen like this, oh my god, it wouldn't happen like this. And so we were networked, and then I can't remember who said it, but went, oh god, what if we did have a conference on this, like what would the paper be? And we came up with some really ridiculous ideas for papers decrying the Route B process. And then we did do a conference.
I stayed in West London with my best friend, who's another Archers. She pretends she doesn't listen every day, but she does at least once. And I got up in the morning and I said to my godchildren, who were quite little, I might be going to meet a complete nutter today. and
you met 100.
Well, that's true. And it was, to be honest, and friendship is one of my most favourite things as well. And I do think that actually your cabinet of your friends, it's not a monarchy. You don't have just your bestie on a throne. You have your cabinet of your women that get you through. And this is one of my most treasured and unique relationships, but because it was all in the doing. We were doing. And then we realised that meant we were talking every day, and it just meant that it was sort of, so some friendships are, but it was more or less immediate. I felt I had, met my person.
It was when Nicola took me, so when the first conference was at the University of Liverpool, and you had blagged a room there, just said, I'm having a meeting on a Saturday, and just left it at that, and of course 100 Archers fans turned up, and we didn't really quite know what was going to happen, but Nicola called me aside, and we'd literally just said hello, and called me aside, and there was this weird sort of like little tiny wall in the corridor bit. Anyway, Nicola snuck behind there and just was hitching up her tights, going, right then, so what are we going to do now? And that was it for me. It's like, yeah, this is one of my people.
I've been in this tight situation myself. Yeah, I know what's going on here. Yeah.
So was it actually on the day of the conference that you first clapped eyes on each other?
Yes.
But we'd had an idea about each other from, you know, how it's like online. You have got, and certainly Twitter, and God, Twitter, I'm like, this is ancient stuff. Twitter about 10 years ago, it was very friendly place. You know, it was a lot of people would link, and it has worsened in ways that we won't go into. But, you know, you feel like I really have a sense of somebody from online, so it wasn't a complete...
No, but we hadn't actually met. And I don't think we'd even spoken on the phone. All of the organisation had been done through direct message on Twitter or just over email.
You're kidding.
No, I know.
So that moment when you first clapped eyes on each other must have been one of those moments, actually, mustn't it?
It was, and there's also a bit, oh, thank God. They're okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because you must have had to develop a lot of trust in each other over Twitter.
I guess it was. I think that first conference, we charged a £5 for the tickets because we just booked university catering, tea and coffee for the morning.
Oh, no, we didn't. I robbed that.
Did you? Does that mean we've got refunds to give back to people now?
No, everyone kept saying, can I have a little more hot water? Who are you? What's going on here?
But that first conference was just, wing and a prayer in a way. And we had no idea how it was going to go. And there's few people in this room, they were at that first one. And we were kind of categorically told at the end of it, like, this has to happen again. And that's when I think for us, it was like, okay, we better have a meeting at least to work out what we're doing here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a huge leap of faith. But I mean, very obviously, immediately, it was going to pay off in terms of a friendship.
And within a couple of years, we did reach the point when we did look at cancelling Reading, and we realised that basically we'd be liable for about 20 grand each. So, you know, it just started with mutual recognition, ended up in near bankruptcy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever tells you this, but it's impossible to make a single pound from the Archers fandom. I mean...
Yeah, absolutely.
A single one, but not any more than about 3.
No, I think one year we had there was something like £57 left over or something like that.
Just get your royalties from the publisher.
Royalties from the publishers about
3
£2
books.
or something like that. Yeah.
3 books.
But yeah, I mean
years,
it's partly also as well though that the people in this room and in that conference space and in that Facebook space where we meet have all become our friends as well. And there's people that we have known over now 7 or 8 years. And they're part, as you say, that beautiful phrase, that cabinet of friends, absolutely. And so when we do the conference, it is genuinely for the love of the Archers, but also for the love of each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's its kind of own machine. It takes a lot to get it going. There is a lot of trust between us, and just a lot of like, it will be fine.
And so if the Archers was taken away from you, you'd still be really good friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you communicate with each other now mostly? I mean, you started on Twitter. How is it now?
We started on Twitter. There's a lot
To
of
be
phone
honest, our
calls.
best thing is when we're together, actually. Like, I'm a bit like those snakes that only need to eat once a while. You know what I mean? I see my best people maybe 3 times a year, and you talk about absolutely everything, get it out of the way. I'm not one for a sort of... I don't mind a WhatsApp or whatever, but it's more... We're better together, I think.
Yeah, and it's one of those friendships as well. Like, we haven't seen each other face to face
Since Brighton.
since we did a Zoom conference in Brighton in that sort of lockdown time. That was the last time we saw each other. Just seeing each other now, and it's like it was just yesterday. It's just there.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it, that such a random thing, such a random point of contact could blossom into something so special.
I don't know if it is random though, because as we've found out over the years, you know, it's all about the layers of... The reason that we are the Archers fandom is because they're almost like our kind of extended cousins that we don't see in the flesh, do you know what I mean? Not that we understand it's not real. I mean, I'm not completely mad. But so we've all got the map in our heads of the village and the clans. So it was just really, I think, extending that generosity a little bit further into the fandom, which, I mean, let's face it, is pretty weird. I mean, it is like, whenever I explain it, I just say, well, it's like a Star Trek conference, but we're not dressed as. We did have thoughts that we were going to all wear cashmere jumpers after Shula mentioned them, or tweed or something, you know. Like.
Oh, but you know what? That could be fun.
Exactly.
I think that could be fun.
Yes.
I think that's your next step.
It's just cosplay.
I think a Lillian Bellamy lookalike competition for the next.
Or you know,
You'd win it, obviously, darling. You'd win it.
I don't know. I think that she's definitely a larger lady than you, isn't she?
Oh, I don't know, darling. Do you think she is? Oh, the listeners out there, I'm very sylph-like, you know. I'm very sylph-like.
There are lots of things that we have in common, though, in talking about Lillian. When we were at, I forget which one it was now, we did drink the bar dry of gin, and they had to go out and get
That
more
was at
gin.
Reading. That was a student union bar.
Yes.
And they said,
Really?
we're really sorry, we only prepared for students.
And we had given them a heads up anyway. There you go.
Oh, yeah. Right up Lillian Street, that. She would love to have been there. It's a shame she wasn't, actually.
Well, it would have drunk dry a lot
sooner.
faster.
A lot sooner.
But that's why she's got her own pub.
Yeah, yeah.
Never dry at the Bull.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Well, it's just been. Wish we had all day to chat with you,
Yeah.
but it's just really special to hear about your friendship and how it started, and we just wish you the very best. I can't wait for the conference tomorrow. I know we're all looking forward to it, and it's going to be brilliant. And thank you so much for doing it, and thank you for being here.
Thank
Sharing
you.
your story with us. Thank you. Yeah. Because friendships do, don't they? They do develop, in different ways and in unusual ways, don't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, work, that's sort of work, isn't it? A work friendship that develops into a sort of closer friendship. Yeah, voluntary work. I always think about Tracy and Oliver, and the fact that they're kind of really unlikely, to me anyway, it's quite an unlikely friendship, but that was sort of, he saw her potential in a work way, didn't he? And they've developed, I think, a really lovely friendship.
They have, and I mean, funny enough, I can remember being in a scene with Oliver way back when he was admiring. He was saying, how much he admired the character of Tracy, and of course, subsequently, she became the receptionist, didn't she, at Grey Gables? But it's a very, very special, and of course, another unusual relationship in the Archers, particularly. I mean, is Jazza and Jim, isn't it? They, very unlikely.
It is, and we talked about this earlier because we can't remember what it was that made them. Was Jazz? Somebody here will know, wasn't it? Was Jazz? Jazz was homeless.
He was, wasn't he?
Gotten chucked out of the other milkman's flat.
Oh, right.
That's right. You're right. Yeah.
The milkman who Harry.
Yes.
Well done, you.
Well done.
My goodness gracious me. You
Well
see.
done. 10 points to Gryffindor.
I know.
Marvellous. But yeah,
That's
that you would never have put money on
No.
Jim and Jazza, let alone Jim, God help us, as Jazza's best man,
Yes.
organising a stag night.
But it's a very touching relationship,
I think
isn't it,
so.
that has now developed, and they defend each other, through thick and thin. So, absolutely. And of course, Rosalind Jensen, who submitted a lovely piece for us for this evening, and her friend Ruth. Now, they bonded at work, didn't they?
That's right. They were the only people who'd heard of the Archers, and everybody at work, when they heard them talking about people in the Archers, thought they were talking about colleagues. Didn't realise that this was, not people that they'd met in real life.
That's
right. So you're presenting a paper at the conference tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
'Cause It's
Looking
a
forward to that.
13-year friendship, isn't it, that you guys have had?
Yeah.
Which is just brilliant.
We're about to meet again in an hour's time.
Marvellous.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. It's sort of, sometimes you find friends when you're not looking for them, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, next, we're delighted to welcome to talk to us Alison Ball and Nick Maxfield. And they are both members of the Saturday group.
So I guess a good question to start with, Alison, if we start with you, is what is the Saturday group?
The Saturday group are all people that met during academic archers, and we continued, because it was so good during lockdown, we just continued meeting up, and it's just a part of my week to just join in and listen to join in the Zoom calls and meet up with anything from 15 to 30 of us, talking about the archers and just talking about stuff that we've done in the week and things that matter to us.
Yeah, so it's like a sort of like an online equivalent of all going down to the pub together or something.
That's exactly it. We talk about the archers quite a lot.
Yeah. But now, I'm right, aren't I, in that the very first conference, the very first academic archers conference you went to was Sheffield, was that right? Now, how many people, Alison, did you know when you walked into the room?
I didn't know any. I had heard on several occasions that there was an academic archers group, and I was really quite jealous about it, like I would have liked to have gone. And then that one year, I actually got it in time, got a ticket, and came down, and I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. And I arrived at the hotel, because the hotels had been suggested, and it was one of the student hostels or whatever. And the first person I met was Pam, and instantly on the same wavelength, instantly. And then we walked over to the place together, and we had evening meal, and Linda Snow was there. It was so exciting. And it just went on from there. And the following day, Pam and I walked over, and we in the coffee line, and we were talking, and someone was talking about what Jazza was doing, and I knew instantly, and it was like coming home. I knew, and it was just the most amazing weekend that I have ever had. And then the following week, I went. They just happened to have a BBC thingy at in London at the on South Bank there at the film festival, and they were talking. I bought the ticket at the very last minute, and I was sitting there, and Charles Collingwood was being interviewed or whatever, and we're all sitting there, and they were talking about Brexit, and someone said, but what did you vote for? And he said, Madam, I'm not going to tell you what I voted for. And then I heard a voice, and she said, Brian, you voted to leave. And it was Sally. And I thought, I recognise her. I was with her the previous week. And it's just people that that suddenly, you're friends with. And it was just amazing.
Yeah. Yes.
So making the decision that you're going to walk into this room full of people that you didn't know and you'd never met before, is that something that's didn't faze you or would be quite usual for you?
It fazed me. The group in front of me, when we were sitting down, they were all crocheting, all of them, and there was another group doing something else, and it was bizarre. But do you know what? I fitted in. It was great. It was just unbelievable. Yeah. And I laughed from start to finish. And then the following day, I didn't quite realise this, the following day when we did the live listening, because I thought, why do I want to listen? And it is a whole new experience. To live listen to the omnibus was just, it set me up for, like the next 6 months.
What was special about it?
Well, because it's all the oohing and ahhing. It's almost pantomime, wasn't it? It's just brilliant.
Yeah, how wonderful. And you said in your lovely piece that you submitted to us that going back to the Saturday group, that it offers you a shoulder to cry
yes.
on, wisdom, support.
People have, over the past 2-3 years, we've listened to people's problems, we've shared with them. People have had the most horrendous weeks, fortnights, God knows what. And it's just, we've sympathised, we've empathised, and it's just to kind of taking you out of yourself and think, God, you've got it bad, but this person's got it even worse. And you just think, and you just feel sorry for them. You know, write a few words and just, you know, I'm here. And it really means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Just really means so much. And this would be the first group, if I, you know, got a problem, this would be the group I'd tell.
How interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, isn't it? Because I guess, have you met all of them in real life, or?
No, only the Saturday group. We did a Licky Hills trip last year, which was just fabulous. And it was really interesting seeing people face to face, because a couple of them I had obviously seen face, but not the rest of them. And they were shorter, smaller, fatter, thinner. You don't get much detail from face, you know. It's well like the radio. Yeah, but, yeah.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Because you kind of have your own mental image of people, and then, then I guess when you see them... did it make any difference when you saw them in real life? Or
I felt I knew them, and I just, after the weekend, I felt I knew them a lot better. Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Alison.
You're
Now,
welcome.
Nick, you found the Saturday group, didn't you, when you were having a difficult time at work? Is that right?
Sort of. I had gone to a couple of conferences, I think, met a few people, lovely Helen, lovely Lou, lovely Sally, who we're going to sneak into our hotel room later. But I've had gone through, at Sheffield I was having a really bad time with work, and I'd just been, I had my autism diagnosis, so I was kind of working out what I was doing, how I was going to cope, what it all meant. Yeah. But sort of the weeks, I think the online conference, I know that there was a lot of, well, we don't want to do that from quarters. It was amazing because it meant that it was the catalyst for our Saturday group, and it meant that we coped with Zoom, with all our technical whatevers, and we got used to it, and we just decided we wanted to carry on meeting. Cara had organised some sort of repeats of papers, and then after that planned time had gone, we just carried on meeting. And like Alison says, they're my first port of call. If I've got an interview, what do I wear? What do normal people wear? If I've got a problem, you know, and it has just been amazing because it's so accepting. We're all a little bit weird, and I think being able to embrace my inner nerd and to sort of go off on the things that I go off on, and the fact that one of my let's go off on ones ended up as a paper this year, a joint paper.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, tell us.
Well, I don't want to give too much away.
Just the outline.
But the University of Felpersham is a distinguished institution, and we'll have an open day tomorrow where we will discuss ways to... some of the bursaries that we've got are going to be very good, because obviously that stops people going out for a sugar-based bursary, which can happen at some universities. So yeah, it has just been lots of fun, and it's been great because it has been a proper collaboration, and it has just been lovely. But just to meet up with people has been amazing.
You mentioned that I can begin to see why there's a lot of laughter and a lot of giggles involved.
Yes. I think we do get serious at times, and we've got a few people who've got encyclopedic knowledge of everything, but there's always a few of us that will lower the tone. And it is good fun. And sometimes we'll have small guests on with all his fuglies in his pants. So
What?
Lou's grandson quite often makes an appearance in his
Thank
pants.
you for the clarification.
Yeah.
I'm sure the listeners will go, what? That's lovely.
But we've got to, we've gone through so many different things, births and deaths, and it's such a supportive group. But they're a group of people that I wouldn't have known in real life.
Yes.
Because of the autism and the way that it's impacted on my self-esteem, I wouldn't normally have spoken to those kind of people. Like with Cara and Nick, just having the opportunity to kind of give a paper was like, wow. And then a chapter in a book. These are opportunities that I wouldn't have had. And to meet some of the people that I have, I just wouldn't meet them ordinarily. It's wonderful.
And you mentioned again in that lovely piece that you submitted to us that there's quite a range of ages, isn't there, within the group?
Yeah.
What's the effect of that, do you think?
It's just so much wisdom and advice, different points of view, and we're all from very different backgrounds. There's kind of like I don't know, it's just something that you don't get nowadays with extended families, having that group, sorry Stephen, but mainly women, of being together and having that kind of wisdom that you would have got in sort of the 40s and the 50s as families stayed closer together. So it is, for me, with no real relatives, it's quite useful.
Yeah, that's great. And so, I mean, is this a group that really makes you feel safe, Nick, would you say?
I've had some difficult times. I had some online bullying, and these guys I had a complete electronic hug from them all. It was unbelievable. And, just made a huge difference.
To your life?
Yeah, to everything.
Yeah.
So, given that you said that you're autistic, do you think there's a difference between online groups and meeting people in real life, or is it just that this is a really special online group?
I honestly don't know. I find some online things difficult, but actually going into a room and feeling accepted is a big thing for me, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's that acceptance that I might not have got in other places, and sort of acceptance of, because we're all that strange, that we can all be strange together.
I love this. Strange, weird, I like to laugh and have a good time. It's just great. Yeah,
thank you so much, Alison, and thank you, Nick, for
thank you
sharing
very
your
much.
stories with us. We really appreciate it.
And I have to say, Nick, just before, that you said in your little, you're normally quite shy. Well, you certainly haven't been shy today. I mean, you've been fantastic. So thank you very, very much for sharing all that. Because it's walking into rooms and all that sort of thing. Being brave about it. It's tough, isn't it? It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
I'm rubbish at walking into a group of people that I don't know. I really, really hate it, and I just think it's so brave to do that, and it's fantastic that there's this place that you can go to where you can walk in as someone on your own and meet like-minded people and feel accepted right away. That's pretty unusual, isn't it, in this day and age?
No, it is. And that comes up again and again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In all the submissions that we've had, most definitely. Of people feeling really accepted from the minute they walk in, anticipating and being very anxious, but actually immediately feeling at home and safe.
What do you like at walking into a room full of people you don't know?
Oh, marvellous, darling. No. No, well, you see, for actors, I mean, it's quite tricky because we have to all the time. I mean, I've been an actor. I mean, I'm 103 now, but, I've been an actor since I was sort of in my early 20s, and you have to get used to walking into audition rooms, whether it's theatre, TV, radio, and you don't know who you're going to meet. It happens constantly on a daily basis. So you have to find a technique to get through all that. But it's scary because you can walk into a room, you don't know if you're going to be interviewed by one person, by gallery of people, and it can be really scary. I think probably as actors you have to find a way through it. I always tend to adopt a personality. I pretend I'm me, of course I'm me, but you have to go with an attitude. And oh yes, I'm feeling really confident today, and of course you're not, because you're thinking, well, but yeah, as actors you have to find a way through it.
And I guess like in theatre, you're constantly walking into a room full of people who've all been cast in the same piece, and they're the people you've got to work with for the next however long it is, and you just have to do that, yeah?
Yeah, you just have to sort of get on with it, The funniest things can be adverts. If you go up for an advert, and there's a very specific description that they want, and you go into a room full of about 20 people and they all look like you. I mean, that's a bit off-putting.
God, that'd be freaky, wouldn't it?
That's a bit off-putting. Anyway.
And I guess when a new person comes into the Archers,
Yeah.
they walk into the green room, and because in their heads Lillian looks like this and Brian looks like this, they don't actually know. They not only don't know who you are, Sonny, but they don't know who you play.
Absolutely. I mean, if it was
So that's really weird.
Yeah, that's weird. And if it was telly, if it was EastEnders or something, you immediately people would know, wouldn't they, from your face. But no, we're always very welcome, because it's very tough, when you come into something like The Archers. You've got so many actors there who've been in it for such a long time. They know the characters inside out. They know each other incredibly well. And one is always mindful. We do make a big effort when new people come in, to welcome them, and because we know how tough it is, how difficult it can be. But yes, it's usually, hello, I'm Sunny, I play Lillian, and they go, oh, it's you. Oh, right.
I'm sure they say, and I knew that because you look just like her.
Oh, of course they do, love
Yeah, but that was just so interesting, because it just sounds like a lovely group, doesn't it? And
the Saturday group, yeah.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah. And Helen Burrows, who we interviewed last season with Cara, mentioned how, and you can see it, how the Academic Arch is like family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, completely.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right, well, now our next guests are from a group that goes back to the last century, called Borchester Asylum. And they're a spin-off from the Archers Anarchists. And in fact, we have to declare an interest, because Jane is one of them.
I'm one of them.
She is indeed. So welcome Barbara Williams and Vanessa Wild. Now, Barbara, briefly, can you tell us who or what the Archers Anarchists is, please?
Well, the Archers Anarchists, I first heard about them on, do you remember Midweek with Libby Purvis?
Yes.
Lovely Libby Purvis. Ian Sanderson was on the radio programme, and he was talking about his new venture, which was the Archers Anarchists. And the whole theory behind them, I was a bit worried when Nick said, we're not mad, we don't think they're real. Well, I'm afraid the Archers Anarchists, their whole thing is the Archers are real. There is no caste.
That's
we
right.
won't have
Yes, I've heard of that.
anything to do with
Yes.
casteism. It's just not on. And the other thing is, most of them are murderers, particularly Shula and David. So I was listening to this and thought, oh, this sounds quite a laugh. So he set up this group, and he set up an email group.
Right.
So that was the Archers
Anarchists.
Anarchists.
And then the Asylum, that developed, isn't it, from that
It
group? Am I
did.
right? Yeah.
Because like a lot of email message groups, we started to chat about other stuff, in particular cats. Because we're mad cat women as well, and there's a few mad cat men. So we got told off for chatting off topic, so we had to set up a little subgroup. And the reason it's Borchester Asylum is one particular member used to send off loads of emails all together, and it used to annoy people a bit. And I said, well, he does this because, he's normally wears a straitjacket. And every so often he escapes and gets hold of a computer and just has to send loads of messages until Matron comes. And Matron comes and puts him back in his jacket, and he goes back into his cell.
That's how they can.
That's how the Borchester Asylum. started.
Brilliant, brilliant.
And I mean, Sunny was delighted that when you described the group, you described it as being very gin and feather boas.
Yes, I'm afraid it is. I'm afraid it is. I've put here, it's like a mash-up between Prisoner Cell Block H, Priscilla Queen of the Desert, and the Cats Protection League. With gin and feather boas.
That's a very interesting combination.
That's the sort of vibe I feel we have, don't you?
That's very much the sort of vibe. I think I'm more the Prisoner Cell Block H end of it.
And obviously, you all meet up regularly, don't you?
We do.
What sort of things do you do together as a group?
Well, we just had lunch on Monday, didn't we?
We did.
We met in London. There's quite a few in London, people in London, so that's easy to... I mean, Vanessa used to be in London, but she's escaped to the countryside. So she's not available to us anymore in London.
But a notable meeting for me was when I was on holiday in China on my own, and I met a member of the Borchester Asylum who was working there.
Wow.
Oh, how extraordinary.
Yes, George.
Fantastic.
Small world, you see. Eh? My goodness gracious me. Yes, so you do all sorts of stuff together then as groups, meals?
Yes,
you go to
we've
theatre
had
or-
theatre outings and things. I've got Priscilla, of course. I think we saw Priscilla twice. And the Book of Mormon and Acorn Antiques and things like that, didn't we?
We've done a few marches as well, haven't
Yes,
we?
we're big on marches. Yes,
We can get a bit political.
yes, we can.
We need you in Ambridge then. Jim needs you, doesn't he? To sort
Definitely
out, you know,
does.
The
Yeah, we
charging
would have been there
station.
marching, wouldn't
Yeah.
we?
you'd have been absolutely brilliant. wouldn't you?
Yes.
Now, what I need to know is, because quite a lot of you in the Borchester Asylum submitted lots of lovely pieces, but what was a recurrent thing that came up was the unlucky dip. Can somebody explain to me what the unlucky dip is, please?
Well, the unlucky day, I mean, at this lunch we had on Monday, everybody brings something wrapped up beautifully, but it's got to be something fairly grotty,
Okay.
but it's always wrapped up beautifully. And then, so everybody puts their presents in the middle, and then we do lots, and then, like, number one can choose which of the things. So
okay.
then it's like, oh, thank you. But, I mean, on Monday, people have started to put in things that are actually quite nice. I thought. So, look, I've brought something really grotty, and you've all brought nice stuff.
What did you bring then, Barbara?
I brought a Ladies' Commonplace book which Jane
Yep,
managed.
I got that, but I also got some coronation party hats and napkins.
And for the listeners, she's actually holding
I
those
have
up
them
for the
here.
assembled company.
And actually, if anyone wants them, I'm going to put them on the table here. You're very, very welcome to them.
Don't all rush.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's answered my question. Thank you very much, Bob, because I did wonder what that was, actually.
And Barbara, you have been inspired by the Archers to write a book of poetry, haven't you?
Yes, that was a long time ago.
But it was marvellous. I mean, Sarah Coward, who was a dear friend of Sunny's and mine, who used to play Caroline Bone, or Caroline, whatever her last name was when she...
Sterling.
Sunny and Sarah used to do a show called Wicked Women, and Sarah used to do one of your poems about Caroline Bone in it, which always brought the house down.
And it's brilliant. It's
very,
an
very
absolutely
funny.
brilliant poem. And I know dear darling Sarah isn't here anymore, but I mean I just think it should be resurrected at some point because it was just so perfect. It used to bring the house down, didn't it?
Yeah, we should have got Barbara to bring it. You could have done it today.
Yes,
Didn't think of that.
Another time.
Another
Well, I have
We
to,
can do that.
I've got to get a word in for John O'Dwyer because he started off this poem called The Church with No Pews. You know, when he was going to remove the pews from the church. So John started, he did a couple of verses of The Church with No Pews, you know, to the pub with no beer. And then I stuck a few in, and it was going on. And he said, it's turning into Desolation Row, this, you know. So, but he's very, very talented, and he edited it down a bit, so we didn't put all the verses on YouTube. But
Is it on YouTube?
It is on YouTube.
Oh, is it? So what would we put in? The Church with No Pews?
A church
Would
with
that-
no
would-
pews.
a
and
church with no
yes,
pews.
you'll find it.
Okay.
And the BBC, they were doing a special Archers songs of praise. And the researchers were just sort of clicking around on the internet, and they found it. And one of these researchers said, "You must come and hear this." So they heard it, and as a result of that, we got an invitation to Songs of Praise. So this particular edition of Songs of Praise from Evesham, it's got us sort of singing our little hearts out.
Oh, lovely.
But they didn't use our song.
Oh, that's a shame.
I know.
Well, I think that should be resurrected again, shouldn't
Definitely.
it? We'll have to find
A
a
rousing
place
chorus
for
at the end of
that.
the conference.
Yeah. Because wasn't June Spencer at that?
She
At
was.
that
It
Songs
was
of
a
Praise.
big
I thought
thrill. I think we sat in the same row.
Yes, yes. Dear June.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And now we started Borchester Asylum practically in the days before computers, but definitely in the days before Zoom and Skype.
Yeah.
So do you remember the first time that we met in real life? Because we'd never seen each other, have we?
I think people were meeting up in ones and twos
Yeah.
because, like, being in London, you probably
met Judy.
Judy quite quickly.
Yeah, and
didn't
that was
you?
weird because we met in a restaurant. I got there a bit early. I didn't know what she looked like. She didn't know what I looked like. So I said to the waiter, I'm expecting a woman. And then he just kept bringing me random women. Like, no, I won't have that one, thank you. Bring me another.
Next.
Yeah.
So, it's good.
Most peculiar.
Yes. I honestly can't remember sort of the first time we met in a big group.
It was
but
so many years ago, wasn't it?
It was a
It is,
long
it's a long time
time
ago. Is
ago.
it 25, 30 years ago or something like that, is it?
It was
was
about before 2000
Yeah, it was
because
1990 something, wasn't it?
because Judy was her daughter was pregnant. So when we set up our group, we said, "Come in because we want to know what she has,
Yeah,
And you can't say it on the other group.
yeah,
So.
because it's not happening in Ambridge.
And now he's 21 or something. isn't
Gosh.
he?
Yeah, I know. Now, Vanessa, you are a lifelong Archers fan, aren't you? And who did you listen with? How did you start listening?
I started like many as a passive listener because my mother listened, and we had a family in Devon who had a farm, and they listened. But what really got me into it was a colleague who used to listen to it at lunchtime. So we'd eat our sandwiches and listen to the Archers, and it was that combination of a regular thing but somebody to talk about it with that really took me from being a normal Archers listener to an avid Archers listener.
Yeah. It's that sharing, isn't it, actually?
Yeah.
The joy of sharing, anticipating,
Yes.
the discussion, well, what do you think? All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And I remember you said that the first time you met up with the rest of the asylum in real life, your friends and your family were pretty horrified. So,
Absolutely. They
Why
said,
was that?
what do you mean you're meeting people from the internet? And I thought, they're Radio 4 listeners, it's central London, in the evening, I think this is probably doable and not that risky. But it took as you say, put on the armour.
Yes, that's right.
But it was
And
fantastic
walking,
and it was fun and we laughed. And I think that's one of the key things that we have. I think I was trying to think, what do we have in common in the Borchester Asylum? Well, really, laughter. I think we share a similar sense of humour, apart from our devotion to the Archers.
And that comes up again and again, doesn't it?
Some people have cats, but not everybody. Some people love folk music, but not everybody.
Yeah. So that interesting, actually. Maybe has anybody been influenced within the group who doesn't like cats, who has been influenced the opposite way? Do you think? Have you been able to influence each other in?
I think everybody, if there's anybody who doesn't like cats, they'd shut up about it.
They would, wouldn't they? They'd know they were in the wrong place.
Yeah,
The wrong place, out.
No, obviously we're very devoted to what's happening to Hilda Ogden and
Ina.
Oh, and of course the Sammy the
It's-
Cat Memorial Lecture.
yeah, the Archers Anarchists have a Sammy the Cat Memorial Lecture when they get round to having a conference. And one of our members, Judy Astley, gave that one year, didn't
She
she?
did, in cat ears. And
That's
Remember,
right.
at one time, our cats talked to each other.
yes, I do. They typed.
They typed. Oh no, that's
Well, we were away,
So it wasn't the
obviously.
voices. You didn't sort of send impressions of your cat voices or anything like
Well,
that.
that would be
This is-
weird.
be a next stage for you, though.
There was
Cat
one
voice
cat
impression.
that couldn't reach the top line of the type, so nothing on the top line ever appeared.
Yeah, now we say it out loud, it does sound a bit peculiar. But quite apart from sort of laughing until we wet ourselves and having weird cat conversations, I mean, on the serious side, we have seen each other through, over the last 20 odd years, 25 years, through an awful lot of big life stuff, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And again, I guess it's the support, which
Yes.
comes up again and again.
Yeah.
That you kind of
Sometimes it's a support and sometimes it's just a refuge.
Yes.
It's somewhere where we laugh and we don't necessarily have to talk about the stuff we don't really want to talk about.
Form of escapism.
But people are there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. It's, yeah, you can just go there and escape. It's like comfort food.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, it's interesting, you know, talking about online, we were forced onto online, weren't we, with the pandemic, online groups and so on. Well, yeah, do you think it's easier to maintain, I'm throwing this one out really, to maintain friendships with a large group online rather than in real life? And what, or do you think that's not a comparison?
I think there's no substitute for meeting up
No. Yeah.
and
in person.
having a good
Yeah.
get together round
Yeah.
a lunch table.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, that's great. Thank you ever
Thank
so
you
much.
very
And
much
Vanessa
indeed.
and Barbara,
You're
that was
welcome.
just brilliant. Bless you. Thank you so much indeed.
Do the next bit.
Yeah. And Dee Barnett and Jill, I've got to pronounce this correctly, Manasseh?
Manasseh.
Manasseh, I beg your pardon, wrote very movingly, didn't they, about the group, and how Jill mentioned that when a group member in Spain had a problem with a vet's bill, the group helped out, and I think Jill took actually the money out to Spain, which was amazing, actually, that kind of support.
Dee mentioned this great story of how her cousin introduced his daughter to a thing called the skipping song to speed up the walk to school. And of course, it's the Dumpty Dum theme tune. I just love the
Yeah,
thought
you can
these-
imagine it, can't you?
Yeah, come along,
Yeah.
sing the skipping song.
You know,
move
to
on.
get them there. It was just absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it, as well, how online groups can kind of, you know, it's like a shared love, isn't it, which can continue for a very long time. I mean, that all started, of course, didn't it, with the virus, with the pandemic, actually. I mean, I know myself. I mean, I couldn't use Zoom before all that, but there were actually, and we used to have. In the early days, we actually had Archer's read-throughs online. I mean, it was a complete nightmare because, you know, Wi-Fi would fail here, there, and everywhere, and it was just. But it was quite interesting, and I formed other little online groups during the pandemic, and it was a lifeline, wasn't it? It was a lifeline for us all in so many ways, actually.
Yeah, yeah, but I think, like Barbara said, it's just wonderful to kind of see people face to face as well, isn't it? Christine Naramall wrote something, didn't she, about going to the first conference and finding my people. It's like,
Yes.
you know, you find your tribe.
Your tribe. Yeah.
Although we probably should say something about if people are going to meet people online, then you have to be aware of safe ways to do it.
Yes, I suppose so. Yes.
Yeah.
No, you do have to be kind of wary, don't you? A little bit careful about how you do it. But that's not enough to put you off doing it.
No, and probably if people listen to Radio 4, that, you know, that means they're all right. But
Not necessarily, Janie, not necessarily.
I was in a pub, I know, again, the other week, and I noticed that, probably everybody knows this, but if you are if you're in that pub or in any pub with somebody and you're really not happy with how it's going or it feels a bit dodgy, you go to the bar and say, "Can I speak to Angela?" And the bar staff know that means you're in a tricky situation, and then they get you out of that tricky situation, yeah? See, everybody nodding, they all knew that. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
But
either.
that's, Yeah, we've never had to do that when we've met up the Borchester Asylum online, but I'm going to listen out for it, and if I hear Barbara sort of hopping, sort of dragging sort of like, for God's sake, find Angela, then I'll know she's not having a nice time.
No, absolutely, and do something instantly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right.
Now, Jane Roth wrote about a particular friendship that came out of the Archers through an app on the Dumpty Dum website. And she can't be with us today, so I'll ask Sunny to read her story.
So this is Jane's story. I first met Mia through an app Royfield had put on the Dumpty Dum website. You could pin yourself to a map to see other Dumpty Dummers nearby. Well, for me, that was Mia. I was very lucky. I can't remember who made the first contact, but we arranged to meet up. Was it just the two of us the first time? I'm not sure. But I do know that we organised a wider meet-up and a Facebook group called Ambridge upon Tyne at the Tyneside Cinema, and that quite a few women came along. Mia's very much at ease, perhaps most at ease, when in charge of a group and busy making sure everyone's included. All was going swimmingly that evening when suddenly Deborah Miller rushed in, took a seat at the end of our table, shook out her curls and started telling us at 90 miles an hour all about the academic Archers and how it was the best thing she'd ever been to. She breezed in, sprinkled her fairy dust on us, and then was gone as quickly as she'd come. Enchanted, Mia and I both fancied the idea of the AA conference, and we decided there and then that we would go. Conference tickets, accommodation, and train tickets to Lincoln were booked. The rest is history. And it's true that the AA conference is the most fun conference ever. It does sometimes happen that Mia and I meet up and the Archers doesn't get a mention. But it is undoubtedly and irrefutably the bedrock of our friendship. It's extremely unlikely that our paths would ever have crossed without it. We live in the same smallish city, but we don't move in the same circles, and we don't really have shared friends or interests other than other Archers-related ones. There are probably many, many things that we would never agree on, but we love each other, I think.
It sounds so lovely, isn't it?
Yeah,
amazing how wide the reach of Borsetshire is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, that's extraordinary how we've heard so many stories of how people with nothing else much in common have formed sort of really important friendships, really vital friendships about the Archers.
Yeah, really
around
deep
the
ones.
Archers.
Absolutely. And now our next guest also has an extraordinary tale to tell. Welcome to Jacqueline Berto, who many of you will know from the Dumpty Dum podcast. Jacqueline, now, you have a wonderful story to tell about listening to the Archers in Saudi Arabia and what came out of that. You've been a listener, haven't you, all your life with your mum, and then this story starts in 1986. Now, where were you then and what happened? Tell us.
My then husband went off to work for a Saudi prince in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. It's not at all as glamorous as it sounds. It was very hot and very restricted. So a small child and I went with him. But my parents, my child was their first grandchild, were very worried about two things. My father saying, she'll grow up without seeing us. You must come back every year and stay here. And my mum saying, what are you going to do about the Archers? So, in fact, it was my dad, Mike, who had the solution because he was a bit of a hi-fi buff, probably still is, really, when he can reach it. And he decided that with his cassette recorder, he could record on a 120-minute tape, because at that time the omnibus was only 60 minutes. He could record two omnibusi, and so that was fine. So they would post this every 2 weeks. I would receive. In Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, you don't just get a letter through the post box. You have to, a man has to go, because women can't get out and do anything like that. A man has to go and collect them from this massive post office. And basically, my poor husband was tasked with searching through all these boxes addressed to this prince for this little cassette that my parents judiciously sent to me. So anyway, so that started like that, and it was very good. And we didn't ever really lose one, although sometimes they came in the wrong order. But when I first arrived, I didn't know anybody. It was a totally isolated experience. So I toddled along to the British Embassy and said, hello, I'm here, small child. Are there any things for us to do? And they said, yes, well, in the embassy, we have a British women's group. Oh, dear. And they have a toddlers group. Oh, yes, well, that's all right then. They also do yoga, blah, blah, blah. Well, yes, I'll go to the toddlers group to begin with. First day, I go in, and there's this woman who was running it called Jo Seed. Now, Jo didn't have a toddler with her, but her husband was part of the embassy staff, and she lived on the... See, they were all very special. They had gin, they had wine, whereas we lived in the Arab Quarter, next to the palace, in the kind of palace enclave, so we didn't have any alcohol, nothing like that. So in fact, there at the embassy, they could have whatever they wanted, you know. It's a diplomatic community. So she was a great friend to know, because it's nice to go for dinner there occasionally.
Yes. Have a bit of vino.
Yes, indeed. But she said this first day, and I said to her, but you don't have any toddlers here. You know, how can you bear running a toddler group? She said, it's very nice because I get to meet people, and there are a few other people from down in the town. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, fine, that's nice. But there aren't many people from down in the town. So I said, well, there you are. I'm here. I've got Claire. That's fine. And she said, so how are you finding it? And I said, well, it's fine, except I love the Archers. She said, do you? Yes, I absolutely love the Archers. And my dad sends me the tapes. And oh, really? Would there be any chance that I could have them after? And that's how Jo and I became friends. So I would receive a cassette, listen to it. I mean, women in Riyadh can't drive, so I had a driver. But as soon as I got out of the post office, you know, I had to sit in the back of the car, and Yadao, my driver, got used to listening to the Archers and actually asked questions about it. He was from India. He was actually employed specifically to work for me because he spoke English, and Indian people know how to deal with the English. So that's what the Saudis thought. Right. So I started passing on these tapes, and they did the round of the British Embassy. And then at the end, they were returned to Jo, and she said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll send the cassettes back to your parents, because with the diplomatic bag, whereas if I posted it in the town, I would never know whether it would get back. Sure. So she did, and every time she wrote a lovely letter. Now, my mother is an inveterate, still, letter writer. She writes letters to everybody every week. And so, of course, she started communicating directly with Jo, who gave her the address of the post box for the embassy. Mm-hmm. And they struck up a great friendship. My life moved on. I returned to England, did another life, actually another husband. But Jo and my mum have remained in contact. Now, Jo was a bit older than me. She's in her mid-70s. My mum's in her late 80s. And they communicate. They speak to each other on the phone once a month. They don't necessarily talk about the Archers, and I'm sure they don't talk about me and my life. But they've remained friends. And, you know, they've never met. They've never met in person. Jo lives in Sussex. My mother lives in Birmingham in North Lincolnshire. And yes, they've never met, but their friendship is very solid. And I think it's thanks to me, but really thanks to the Archers.
Oh, absolutely. It's a lovely, I think that's wonderful,
amazing.
wonderful
That's
story.
pretty much 40 years, isn't it?
It is.
So have they ever done Zoom or Skype or anything like that?
Oh, good gracious, no. As I said, my mother is a pen and ink lady.
Yeah. So they've never met, but have they seen photographs of each other?
I assume they do.
Right.
They've exchanged photographs and everything. I don't know.
But they've not certainly done an online.
They've never done online. And it's definitely the telephone and pen and ink, postcards and that kind of thing. But no, it's great for Mum. And in fact, my mum and I were estranged for 20 years. And following the death of my daughter a few years ago, we kind of reconnected. And one of the first things she said to me was, you know, Joe Seed, I'm a bit worried about her. Who is Joe Seed? This is one of the first conversations I had with my mother after 20 years. So, you know, it's been very interesting. I'm so glad that they've had each other for all the years, even when I wasn't around. So.
Yes, absolutely. Extraordinary.
Absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? What a fantastic story.
Mm.
Do you still talk to your mum about what's happening in Ambridge?
Well, in fact, we've just gone through a bit of a bad phase because she said, no, I think I'm going to give up. It's so rubbish. But she's struggling with her health at the moment. And when I leave conference on Sunday, I'm going and I'm going to download the One Stiletto in the Grave podcast for her. I've already tried downloading Dumpty Dum for her, but she's can't stand hearing your voice. So there you go.
So, what's your mum's name?
Olive.
Olive, thank you for listening all those years, and we send lots of love, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. This is Lillian here, darling. There you go. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's just extraordinary that your mother and Joe have never met, and that such firm friends. That's wonderful.
It's beautiful, actually. It's a really beautiful story.
Yeah.
Thank you ever so much. Now, Catherine Sangster also wrote about listening to the Archers far from home. Now, she can't be here today, so Jane is going to read her story.
It was the late 90s, and Leeds University had 2 scholarships for new graduates to go and study at the University of Massachusetts for a year. I won one, and Sarah won the other. I studied linguistics, and she studied history. Our paths hadn't crossed as undergraduates in Leeds, although I'd reviewed a play she was in for the student newspaper, fortunately, favourably. She became and remains a close friend. And one of our most formative experiences was meeting up in my dorm room in Massachusetts to listen to the illicit recordings of the Archers that my dad made for me as a reminder of home. In those days, the omnibus was an hour, and C120 cassettes were a thing, so he'd take them off the radio and post me a couple of tapes each month with an omnibus edition on each side.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Well done, Catherine's dad, is all I can say. I remember those, you know,
all these dads. Well, I remember sending them to our friend Noelle Gadalla when she was in the States, and she listened to the birth of William Grundy in Times Square.
Oh, brilliant. Gosh, that's a long time ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Noelle, actually, I mean, she's a good friend of us both, but she listened to the Archers like so many, you know, folk have done from being a small child. And she later, the name may be familiar to some of you, but she later became one of the Archers scriptwriters for many, many years. So, yeah, that's a nice connection with Noelle.
Yeah, it did. Hello, Noelle, if you're listening.
Absolutely.
And that's, I like these intergenerational things. Sally Cadle wrote, didn't she, and said she used to chat about the Archers with her mum, and now that her mum's memory's not so great, she can't have those conversations with her, but she can chat to her academic Archers friends instead, which is rather lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. Anyway, yes, I suppose to finish with...
To finish our stories from listeners, we have a journey from message board to marriage.
We do indeed. And this is the story of Mary and Nigel, who are here with us today. And it's quite a wonderful and amazing story. And it is so amazing that we realised we couldn't possibly do justice to it in 10 minutes. And so, because there were so many wonderful ingredients to your story. So we're going to devote a whole episode of One Stiletto in the Grave to you and your story. So watch the space, everyone. Bit of a teaser, just to say their Archer's friendship, as Janie said, blossomed into marriage, and they walked down the aisle to the Archer's theme tune.
They did.
Marvellous.
So, hello Mary, hello Nigel.
Hello. You see, they are here.
They are here. It's a few weeks' time, isn't it, that we're going to... We're going to record with you, and we're really looking forward to that. And what a fantastic story.
Yeah, lots of ingredients to it.
Yeah. So just before we kind of wind up, because we're in this space, I just wanted to ask you a few things, because I thought people might be mildly interested in the Archers and what happens here.
Just a bit.
So you said earlier that you used to do the read-throughs here, but you don't do them now. So why is that?
Well, we've now gone back into our green room, which is opposite the studio. And as I said before, the studio is behind us, listeners. You won't know that, but behind the audience here. And before the pandemic, we always had our read-throughs in the green room, which is a small room. But eventually, during the pandemic and later, we had the read-throughs here, which is in a much bigger room. So we had a little bit of a distance on each other. But we still do, before we come in to record, we still do have to do a COVID test, just to make sure. And I have to say, there isn't probably a month that goes by when somebody in the cast doesn't have COVID. I mean, they ring in to say they've got COVID, and so not only are we recording live in studio, but we're still also occasionally recording down the line as well, which is, of course, what we did during the pandemic. So, yes, the green room is just through there on the right-hand side, and we've now gone back into there to do our read-throughs.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed as you came through, but you can actually see, this is very weird, you can see there's a window into the studio as you go out round to the right, and it's rather like that window into the dairy that Clary and Susan keep complaining about.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
there's this is a quite meta thing, thinking looking through that window at Clary and Susan complaining about people looking through the window, which sort of gave me the shivers a bit.
Yes.
So if, God forbid, because you had COVID, didn't you, the other
I
week?
did have COVID.
So if
Tara
on a,
had COVID.
if on a recording day
Yeah.
you do your COVID test in the morning,
Yes.
yeah? And if it's positive, then and you're in 2 episodes, what happens?
Well, you have to ring in and you have to say, sorry, I've got COVID, and then everybody jumps into action in the studio. They record what they can, but everything has to just be rescheduled. Or if you're not at death's door, you probably will get on the computer and do it online. And you record that way. But yeah, we used to record before the pandemic 4 episodes a day. We're now up to 3 episodes a day, because actually it does take quite a lot of time, particularly if you've got somebody who has got COVID and they're doing it down the line. The editing is quite tricky. We also, pre-pandemic, always used to share. For instance, if we were doing a scene together, we'd share one microphone. Post the pandemic, when we went back into studio, we were obviously able to record in studio, but we'd each have our own microphone like this. And again, that takes a lot more time for the technicians to pull everything together, because we're recording on different lines, like Jake knows here. So it's been quite a business, and it's lovely to be able to be back now recording on one microphone, because although one's recording into a microphone, it's lovely to have that person that you're doing a scene with close by.
It must be quite difficult if you're doing a sort of intimate scene, as you might be doing with
Justin Elliott. Yeah.
If he's kind of like half a mile across the studio over there,
Yes.
and you're there.
But that's the magic of radio, Jane. You see, it's the magic of radio.
I suppose it is.
But yeah.
Now, the other thing I didn't realise, we interviewed Tim Stimpson, who's mega script writing god on the Archers for the podcast a few weeks ago. Listen to it if you've not already. I assume that the writers were around when you recorded, but you barely ever see them, do you?
No, we don't. I mean, even before the pandemic, we rarely saw the writers. Actually, they rarely came into studio, and more so, now, because the fewer people in studio, really the better. But no, that we don't. And actually, last weekend, one of our lovely writers called Adrian Flynn, who'd been writing for the Archers for many a long year, sadly died a good few months ago now, and a walk was organised in his memory. And it was absolutely lovely, because there were a lot of writers there, and people that we don't normally see. And so that was really nice. It was a real mixture of actors, technicians, writers, admin. It was very joyous occasion.
To do. Where did you walk?
We walked just outside in Worcestershire. It was Hanbury. It's a lovely walk, and the lovely story about Adrian Flynn. He was a lovely man, but he and I used to joke, because when we left Pebble Mill, he gave Lillian the last line in Pebble Mill, and then when we arrived here at the mailbox, just coincidentally, he gave Lillian the first line, and I always treasured that moment, and we always used to laugh, and we always used to say, no money was changed hands in order for that to happen. But it's just nice to remember Adrian. He was a lovely man. Yeah.
And there's something that I kind of know a bit of the answer to this, but a lot of people don't. What happens to, you must have so many scripts, crap loads of scripts, and they're all, it's all on paper. You're not getting them you're not reading all electronically. So what happens to the scripts when you've finished with them?
Well, we have receptacles in the studio and outside the studio that we put them in, and they are gone. I don't
really?
know what happens to them then, but clearly, they are cut up, burned, whatever. Or one will take them home. I mean, I have got loads of scripts, I have to say. I'm hoping that one day they might be worth something. I hope they might be, actually. And occasionally, of course, they go out to charities. Signed scripts will go out to charities as well. But, of course, we have to be very, very careful with them when we record in there, mum's the word. We don't spill the beans on anything.
Because you record quite a long way ahead, don't you?
Yeah, we record about sort of 4 to 6 weeks ahead.
If you dropped a packet of scripts on the bus,
yes,
that's like a state secret, isn't it?
Yes. I think as well in the past that could have happened to an unfortunate actor.
Really?
Yes, many a long year ago. But the panic, would be horrendous, wouldn't it?
Oh, no, better to drop it here.
Oh, indeed. But the Daily Mail, next story, what happened with Shula, or Tim and Ruth. Yeah, nightmare. Yeah. Oh,
So-
hello. How'd you do?
So if you lose your scripts on the bus, does that mean that you then meet a terrible death?
Probably. Yeah, so you cling onto your scripts as tightly as you possibly can. You don't want. It's like sometimes when you get the scripts, and it says, "Oh, Lillian's going on a nice long holiday," and you go, "Oh no, how long is this holiday going to be?"
Yeah. Or Lillian's got a bit of a headache, and you think, no.
Yes. What can this lead to?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you don't want that. That's for sure.
Yeah. I do vaguely remember when my daughters were younger, them coming to your house and drawing pictures in the old days, the back of some of the scripts. But they would have been very old ones. It's very, very irritating because you and Sarah are so horribly discreet about what's coming up.
You have to be.
I ply you with drink, and it's all to no ruddy avail. I will never, never, never forgive. Sarah came and actually stayed with us the night before she was going to the palace to meet Prince Charles. My jacket went. She wore my ruddy jacket, but she never told us where she was going. Nick went up and ransacked her bedroom to see if she got some script in her bag, but she'd locked it away.
Well, it would be more than her life was worth. She always got the royalty, Sarah.
She always got the
She
royals.
always got the royalty. She
did. She got it was
Princess Margaret, you name it.
Oh, she had Princess Margaret,
Camilla,
didn't she?
Queen
Princess
Camilla, the
Camilla.
future. Yes, she got the lot. She had style.
You've been to the palace, though. You went. You did a.
We did.
You did a turn, didn't you?
We did. We went.
You did a turn for the king.
We did a turn for the king. In fact, yes, I was selected to do a little scene for Camilla. Actually, it was Camilla. It was for our 70th, the 70th anniversary. It was absolutely lovely, and she's charming. I mean, I met her a couple of times actually. She's a really lovely. The first time she met me, because she's a great Archers listener, of course. She said, "Where do you get that laugh from?" And I said, "Well, it's the bottom of a gin bottle, Mum. I mean, I can't think of anywhere else." But she is really lovely. She's delightful. Yeah. Yes, so we've hobnobbed with royalty, love. Oh yes.
You have.
Oh,
you
yeah.
have. But you are just disgustingly discreet, and it does upset
Well, we want
me.
more episodes. We don't want to be cut out.
That's true.
Give them the sack.
No. Well, Sonny, like Linda's pantomimes, all good things must come to an end.
Oh, no, they mustn't.
Oh, yes, they must. Thank you very much to the Academic Archers for inviting us to be part of their conference weekend. Thank you very much to the BBC and to Hannah in particular for hosting us and looking after us so well. And thank you, audience, for joining us here tonight. And to all of you who thought about friendship and sent your stories to us.
Yeah, there were some lovely stories, and I'm sure it's made us all think, actually, about our friendships, appreciating the friends that we have, and maybe how to find more of them as well. Yeah.
And last but not least, I think a big thank you to Ambridge, because without Ambridge, none of this would be possible.
Absolutely. And on that note, let us end the evening with a rousing chorus of the Archers theme tune. All right, everybody? And it's going to be the dum-de-dum one, of course. So, after me, 1, 2, 3. Dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum, dum-de-dum-de-dum, dum-dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum, dum-de-da-da-dee-dum, dum-de-da-da-dee-dum, de-da-da-dee-dum, de-da-da-dee-dum.
Dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum, dum-de-duddly-dum. Thank you.